the economic collapse of the late 2000s hurt most Americans, but not equally. So here's the thing. According to a 2011 Pew study, while median household wealth dropped by 16% for white Americans, it dropped by a stunning 53% for African Americans. What accounts for this dramatic disparity? Well, traditional explanations tend to focus on things such as the fact that African American families had a higher proportion of their total wealth tied up in this really vulnerable housing market, and that they were targeted by predatory lenders. But according to a new paper just out in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, that may not be the full explanation. It looks as though a more subtle form of racial bias may have played a role as well. This is super weird, by the way, and this is from Mother Jones. Thanks to psychological factors that in a recession tend to make those biases worse. The new study is by Amy Croce and David Amadeo at New York University. Amadeo in particular has extensively studied what are called implicit racial biases. These are uncontrolled prejudices that manifest themselves in our split-second reactions to images or in other cognitive tests. According to one estimate, for instance, 75% of whites harbor these subtle subconscious bias in favor of other whites and against blacks. The study adds a new twist to this large and well-established literature on the bias. It finds that when people are made to think about economic scarcity, their subconscious perceptions of race change as well. In particular, they're more likely to internally visualize African American faces as being darker in color and more stereotypically black, perceptions related in prior research to the expression of higher levels of discrimination. The study found that even when asked to divvy up the money between two people, white study participants allocated less money to an individual who is perceived as being stereotypically black.
Wow. So, look, this is the part of the program that I love, when we learn really amazing facts. And two stories we did have stuck with me throughout. One was that when they took the same exact resumes and they put a stereotypically white name and a stereotypically black name on it, and they'd send it to people, and blacks would get 50% fewer callbacks.
Whoa.
Do you know how much harder that makes it to get a job?
Yeah.
I mean, that's monumental, 50%,
yeah.
right? But it's the same exact resume otherwise. So like people say like, oh, you know, you'll hear, oh, Obama got elected president, so we're past all that now. But we're not. It's still buried at the very least in our unconscious,
yeah.
right? And so that was one issue. And then, but the one that actually stuck with me even more is, they did a study of people selling things on eBay, like iPods at the time and stuff. And they would have a white hand holding it, and they would have a black hand holding it.
Okay.
So you don't see the whole person or anything, just the color of the skin of the hand. And people would offer a lower price to the black hand. Okay, same exact thing, product, okay. The specs are identical. They would trust the black hand to mail it to them less, so that they would ask for more assurances, etc. So it's amazing the difference that it makes. And to be able to overcome those disadvantages, you can do it. There's no question you can do it, right? But at the same time, don't mistake the fact that there is a significant hole you got to climb out of to be able to overcome those things, right? Now you add to this that when times get bad, according to this new study, things get even worse in terms of discrimination. So, and it's funny how the human mind works. So it's very sad actually how the human mind works. When there's scarcity, they're like, I gotta get mine. And so what's my gut reaction gonna be? I'm gonna discriminate against people that I've, at the very least in my unconscious, I have buried it are the bad guys, or I've been told are the bad guys.
Yeah, you gotta find out who the enemy is.
Right, they're not like me, and I gotta make sure they don't get it and I get it. Right? So look, learning these things is the first step to getting beyond them. So don't get too like bummed out by this. It's hard not to, right? Yeah. But at the same time, once more people know it, it doesn't mean that everybody that was in that study is bad guys, right? It just means that's how the human mind works. And if we teach ourselves different things, the reality, which is that everybody's equal, you'll get different results.
Well, and like you said, this doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. This is the subconscious. So if this isn't happening on a conscious level, this could be you and me. It's subconscious. It doesn't. Ironically, I don't think that discriminates. It depends how you were brought up. It depends on your culture, and you would fight it all day long, but that doesn't mean that you're not a part of it.
Yeah, and so look, we got to look to overcome it. And it's not a matter of blaming anyone about it. It's a matter of how do you fix it,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure that this discrimination, of course, is not just against African Americans. By the way, Latinos lost an even bigger percentage of their income during the recession because a bigger percentage of their wealth was tied up in their houses,
Yep.
right? And then my guess is if you did resumes with a stereotypically white name and a stereotypically Muslim name, the callback situation on that might be a little different as well, right? So a lot of this is around us, but first step is knowing it, and so it's not to blame people, it's so that we can get past it.
Well, and how do you fix it? I mean, if you're an African American, is your first thought to say, well, I'm going to try and go out and change this, or I'm going to assimilate because I don't want to be part of this statistic?
Okay, well, as an African American, wait a minute. Okay, so I guess that goes to JR.
Well, that's the other thing too. Even though the names will be a certain extent, because we know those studies that have said that, they still look at you. And this is something else, by the way. What you do is and it's happening so much more with so much more internet conversations and discussions about things that happen. People point stuff out, and then people get upset. Respondents get upset and go, "Oh, race card. See why you keep complaining?" And that's when it gets more frustrating when we go, "Listen, I understand where I'm coming from. You don't. So stop telling me what my experience is." And it turns into a fight about, you can't tell me that I'm racist when I know how I feel and all this stuff. When a lot of it, as we point out, is subconscious. And I said this years ago. Black people are probably the same way because we're just as much brainwashed as everyone else. We're afraid of our own folks. When we look at someone, you go to ATM and you see a black dude walking behind you, and you're a black woman, you're probably gonna go. Chris Rock said it years ago on a stand-up. It's not like only, I guess, the white folks have these negative views of black people.
Well, like you said, we're all watching the same TV. We all have access to the same media, so it's poisoning everybody equally.
Yeah, we all live in the same culture. That of course reminds me of the famous brown eye, blue eye experiment, right? Where a teacher decided that she's going to tell the kids with, and she switched it up, but let's just pick one of them and say, the guys with the brown eyes are superior, the kids with the blue eyes are inferior, right? And the most amazing part of that experiment was not that the kids who were told that they were superior immediately started acting superior, and by the way, started getting better grades, right?
Wow.
Was that the kids who were told they were inferior immediately internalized it and started getting worse grades. So that's maybe the most damaging part of this. So, and by the way, I can answer your question too, because if anybody had to change their name, it's me. I mean, J.R. Jackson could be anything, right? No, they know. They know because you spell it Jayar, right? But if you spelled it Jr, they think they might think that you're from Texas.
Dallas,
yeah, right? So, but Cenk Uygur is just not Anglo. Okay, they don't know what it is, but it ain't Anglo.
It ain't part of their culture.
Right, I could have changed that to Jack Unger. Hey, everybody, how you doing?
Jack Unger.
On Z100. Jack Unger. I was in radio, right?